Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October. We have two people with excused absences, Terrell and David. May I have a motion to accept their absences as excused? Great. Is there a second? All right. All in favor? Any opposition? No. We have the minutes from our September meeting. Any updates, corrections? May I have a motion to accept the minutes? And there's a second. So public comments, do we have any comments here? Sure. All right, so now, liaison, planning commission, SMAC, Nicola.
Yeah, spoke with Ben earlier this week and have a few on the docket that are pretty interesting. One, those that are kind of coming on the way, and there's one that just have an FYI as far as progress goes. But it's worth mentioning. I know Samantha added some to the list as well to kind of discuss the things for those contributions as well. So it's good to keep in touch on what's going on in Raleigh and make sure we're hearing those considerations, but nothing too major here. Over to you.
Yep. First thing, just want to mention something that's kind of on staff's radar, deals with the Swift Creek land management plan. We have had a resident of Garner contact the city and then contacted the other communities that are in that. Where we have talked to the town of Garner, and we're meeting, trying to set a lot of the issue comes down to density versus impervious area. As there's both approaches are in the Swift Creek land management plan, and that's kind of where the resident was asking kind of what is the goal of that.
And just a little context for those of you who aren't familiar with this, Swift Creek is the watershed that drains into Lake Wheeler, Lake Benson, which is one of Raleigh's water supplies. So that's why there's additional land use restrictions in that watershed above and beyond just normal land use restrictions and development requirements for the rest of the city.
Yep. And since the 90s, kind of talked about that. So that's just something that we are, in case you hear something, we are responding to that. Going into the council and planning commission update, the middle of the month. Council meeting, there was a rezoning case at 0 Gorman Street. It was deferred until October 17th, and the motion at that point is just to set the public hearing, which they're targeting a public hearing of November 7th. I'm going to more details once we get to it. On the PC agenda, there's a rezoning case that we talked about last time, Z2223, the one on Trailwoods, that's got a lot of floodplain on it as well. And then one, thanks to Commissioner Crop, sorry, for and it's off of Strickland Road, and it's actually draining to the Falls Lake watershed, and it's an interesting rezoning case, which I'll go into in a second. So the first one is Z3523, 0 Gorman Street. This is kind of the location of town it's in here, the southwest side. Basically going from conservation and management, which is essentially a zoning district where you can't do anything, basically, except just preserve that area in its natural state, to RX3 conditional use, which would allow a denser 3-story building, is what that means, usually like an apartment building or something like that. So this is the zoomed in area on Gorman Street here outlined. And then the floodplain is on the western and northern edges of the property here. And I've also done, not great to see on the presentation, but everybody crowd around and look at it. There's also a topo here, which you can see topo lines. So the southern portion is pretty flat. And the more northern portion here has got some more fall, but it looks like a continuous slope kind of going down to the creek. So essentially what they're looking for is the applicant has stated that this would be for an affordable housing project. which is something that the city is very, very much in favor of, getting more affordable housing, but it does have some floodplain issues. And the Partners for Environmental Justice have actually commented to the Planning Commission with kind of 6 conditions they'd like to see added. One of which is completely around staying out of the floodplain and that sort of area. They didn't recommend disapproval or deny. They just sent it back to the city council to schedule a public hearing. And that was to allow the applicant to possibly incorporate those conditions that the PEJ had asked for. So that was why it was deferred to city council Tuesday as well. On the October 17th meeting, the applicant will incorporate all those conditions and in some form or fashion. And I believe Wade was out at the PEJ meeting last night, and they did discuss that they were having those discussions with the applicant. So that's where that stands. With that being the case, similar shaped property in shape, if you remember the one that was up for a city rezoning, where they're talking about affordable housing, and I think the topo is a little bit different here in some of the areas, but we'll just.
I think one thing we didn't maybe discuss or should have looked at, but as far as I think the last time, it did not get approved for several reasons, but kind of a portion of it did for the other property. What is the kind of land? The other one's very wooded, it's on the side of the road. What's, I know like the topography, but I just popped into my head and what the kind of landscape is.
It is.
Same.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's like 100%. So like I said, I'm not sure when the conservation management zoning was on it, like how long, but it's been on there long enough. There's been nothing, and it's a wooded site. Yeah, sorry, this is one of your.
And that was one of, sorry, I don't know if now is the time for discussion, but I
Yes,
just have a
please.
clarifying question. Just about the history of the conservation easement that was put there, the conservation management area that was put there. Was that in conjunction with another proposal that was moving forward, or was that sort of a standalone?
I couldn't find anything tying it to another rezoning case, and it was an older file, so there's nothing really saying kind of why it was there, but it's just been there for probably since like the 90s. I think it's when the case was, and it wasn't attached to another adjacent development or anything like that. So. Any questions about this one?
They have a place where they're proposing the buildings.
I have not seen a site plan for any of this, so, and nor have they submitted a site plan. They just stated that it's a affordable housing project, because at the rezoning stage, they don't have to show a site plan or anything like that, so.
I guess my only other question is it common for us to be seeing proposals that sort of propose to shift conservation land into rezoning or subdivision in Raleigh? Is this pretty common, or is this more of a unique situation?
It's unique, that doesn't say, I mean, like we don't usually see like a standalone conservation management, like you mentioned, area like this. Usually it's part of a larger development that we've seen develop like 30 years ago. And like, we don't really see that going away. That's what the case is too, because that is something to consider. Is this is open space that is now open, that will, no matter what kind of housing they put back, it won't be open once it's developed, so.
Future land use plan shows conservation management. The future land use plan does not show residential.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, so it's inconsistent with the future land use plan as well, or land use map, sorry. So, yeah, so it's definitely got some lift, and I imagine, assuming they do go to public hearing on November 7th, this will definitely be a case that gets a lot of attention on November 7th. Anyone wants to contact me before that to see if it's been scheduled or anything like that, feel free, and we can, or if you all would like to have comments, you can send those to Wayne as well to kind of talk about it and send them to the city council. The next one is, like I said, the one we talked about previously last month on Trailwood Road. The star looks almost exactly the same place. Apologize, but it is pretty close to the same zoomed out location. But this is that one that has one lot that's almost completely floodplain. The other lot is at the top of the hill, but not really floodplain, but it's adjacent to some neighbors that are in the ETJ that don't necessarily want townhomes or apartments next to them. So, but this one's going from a plan development district to R6. And issue one about this one is it was a previously denied case back in 2021 and back for a similar approval now. So it's curious to see what kind of conditions are we putting on this one. Currently, the case is scheduled to go to the October 10th planning commission, so it's not even close to setting a public hearing at this point. But I do know, going from Wayne again, is Department for Environmental Justice have got this on their radar too, and they were going to take a look at this case and possibly submit something to the planning commission for their consideration as well. But staff has stated that we would like to see them stay completely out of the floodplain, because even though we've got the UDO ordinance, there is a variance mechanism in that, so we'd like to get them to be on board with not doing any sort of variance to get in there, so. That was not a legal way I said that at all. I apologize for me stumbling over that. That's what I was trying to wrap my head around. Any other questions? Okay, so this was all on the northern side of town now. So up on Strickland Road, like I said, in the Falls Lake watershed, 16.25 acres going from R4 to R10, which, sorry, R4 is 4 units per acre, R10 is 10 units per acre. And so the curious thing about this one is it was a previously approved rezoning case in 2021 to go from R1, which is more of a rural residential one, to R4. So this would potentially like allow for more density and possibly apartments. I'm not sure exactly how the R10 section works with garden apartments and things like that in our Falls Lake watershed. If anybody knows what this is Strickland Road and Legion Road, and there's a Harris Teeter Shopping Center right here that drains away from the watershed. And this kind of undeveloped piece drains for the Falls Lake watershed. So I know there have been some design issues from the 2021 case where they were, this Neuse River buffer stream here was restricting access from the south here. So there was talk of going through this neighborhood street here, which is a built street to their property line. So I have not seen what their updated site plan is for this one. And right now it has been gone through one round of review from staff, and we have asked a multitude of questions from many different trades, and we have not heard back to get anything back from them. But I appreciate this being brought on our radar too, especially in light of discussions we're having with the Swift Creek area of land, and this kind of dovetails into that proposal. So. But I think there'll be much more to come on this one. So this one won't be falling off our presentation anytime soon. So because it's not even set to go to planning commission yet. So.
This site's gonna look at a lot.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this one was flagged for me by some folks who live in the area, and I know the previous Neuse River keeper walked the site, but one thing that they brought up to me that's not on the map is just to the east, a little public park that is, that I'm not sure what stream that is that runs into Falls Lake, but it runs through this public park. And I know that there was concern about stormwater impacts to the public park there, as well as just the topography, which we can all see.
Yeah.
This thing, but did you say it was a Fred Meyer there? That drains away from the creek?
Yeah, the Harris Teeter drains.
The Harris Teeter.
south. So yeah, because there's they actually.
Fred Meyer, I'm in Oregon again.
No. The reason I know that so well is there's an old detention structure here from an old like zoning case prior to our stormwater ordinance that it actually drains to.
Okay.
So it
That's
drains
helpful.
across Strickland to a different detention catchment. And probably when that was developed, and I don't know the year there, Cedar was developed, they probably just graded to get away from the Falls Lake. If I'm being honest, that's something the staff level would not allow at this stage, but it's something that the council has allowed in the past.
Just anecdotally.
Yep.
Back of the envelope, it seems like we're seeing more, I speak for myself, I'm seeing more rezoning cases that are either in floodway or floodplain or part of that. Is that new? Would you say it's consistent? It just seems like I've seen more in the past, maybe 3 or 4 years, but that's only 4 years.
I will say, and I'm not talking to anybody's pre-SMAC life, but I will say, us having this presentation is helping to bring it on your radar a little bit more. Anecdotally, what we've been seeing as far as development in our floodplain, we are seeing less. Because we've been going through some of our FEMA data this morning, actually, a presentation to Wayne. And every time you build a building in the floodplain, we have to get an elevation certificate. And we used to get a lot more of them. And we've seen about less than 10, like in the past 4 years. I'm across
The past 4 years.
4 years, yes, since COVID started.
Okay.
That was kind of our benchmarking we were using because we were tracking how many we were getting. Because FEMA makes us go regional with a fine tooth comb, and we've always been kind of worried about not wanting to, like, they don't give it to us until we're ready to see it, and so we're always dealing with that pressure. But now I'm like, if we're only seeing like 3 or 4 a year, we can take as much time as we need to make sure we get it right.
And your ordinance changed.
Exactly.
What's allowed? Be 50%.
Yeah, so, yeah, like in '06, we changed it to pretty much, you could only develop 50% of the flood, or the FEMA floodplain and the city of Raleigh floodplains. And so I definitely think that's had an impact.
Okay.
It hasn't been as flip a switch as we noticed. If I hadn't done all the FEMA cert work, then I wouldn't have noticed it necessarily. Like, wait a minute, we're not seeing hardly near as many as we used to.
Yes, okay, that's good to know, thank you.
Yeah, but I think,
I do think it would be fair to say, as Raleigh development pressures go up, land values
Yes.
go up, probably some of the properties that were more expensive and more difficult to develop are starting to come on the radar now just because of the property value. The steep site, it may have been harder and more expensive to develop. Developers may look at that because they can put that cost in and get their money back from that investment, perhaps. Again,
So you're saying that we might see a trend upward?
we could.
well, with the growth of
Once we
Raleigh,
run out of green space.
seeing development.
Gotcha, okay.
I mean, just, and another anecdotal, right on Crabtree Creek, by my house, there's a site that sat vacant for years. That was owned by the quarry, and the quarry sold it, and they built apartments there. It's not necessarily in the floodplain, but it's on such a steep slope.
Yeah.
They were able to pay for back good apartments. And like Commissioner Smith said, this has been through probably a multitude of different designers and developers trying to figure out a way to develop this. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so the next item is the SMAC work plan conversation. This came out of our meeting last month, around the conversation of having more ownership around the work plan, which is our document. So this will be on the agenda every month, at least to keep it before us. If you have your PDF, the work plan begins on page 9. And so I thought it'd be worth at least just looking at this, not spending a ton of time. And I certainly wanted to try to codify it in the agenda for a constant state for us. Any comments, at least on the September meeting, as you look at the work plan for 2024, things you want to discuss at this meeting? I know we talked last month around maybe a subcommittee. And it escapes me, it was David who suggested a subcommittee. I guess the minutes would capture what specific subcommittee that was. If I remember, so. The B. So I typed to the B. Okay. So I just want to hold space. If there are any comments. Yeah, it was to be, it was number 7. I think, development of enhanced stormwater utility crediting policy and program. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Which page?
The group PDF is page 9, let's see, this is page 11. But it's not, yeah, that's not, right.
It's like 5, but not 5.
Yeah, so I'm, I guess, looking at 2 different documents. And I didn't even talk about it. Yeah, that's the annual report.
Page 3 in that document. Page 3. Page 3.
Right there on page 5, just scroll up. That's it. Right
Yeah,
there.
is that it? Yeah, right there, development.
This one?
Yeah.
And this is a topic we have a consultant studying ongoing right now. And so I do think that it could be appropriate for SMAC to have a separate group discussing this.
Okay.
We could bring this forward as a, an early draft with the ideas that have been explored. That might be the appropriate time to send it to a committee for a little bit more feedback and discussion, if that was something the commission desired.
And when would that, what's the timeline?
Pat, what do you think, or Scott, maybe, I guess, what's the timing when we might have a draft on that fee credit? Early next year, maybe?
Okay. All right. So we have some time.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think that's something. What do you commissioners think?
Are you gonna present it again? I mean, you guys presented. Yeah, so present it. Yeah, then we could make a subcommittee.
Okay. All right. Anything else related to the work plan?
I like the idea that it's part of our, however it shows up in our agenda, the last thing, whatever, it just as a reminder, right, it would be here, so we've used that on other boards and commissions too, just to make sure we're thinking about what we said we're gonna do.
Right. All right. Wayne.
We don't have staff updates, but I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Whit Weaver, who has joined us today. Whit's the director of Raleigh Water, who's our partner on the water and wastewater management side. Serves not only the city of Raleigh, but much of eastern North Carolina too. So that's a distinct difference. Wake County, I'm sorry, thank you. Wake County. How many jurisdictions in addition to Raleigh? 6? Okay. So, larger service area, but, certainly a partner and, provides a lot of opportunity for collaboration. And, Mr. Wheeler's here primarily, I think, for the update from the Upper Neuse River Basin, which will be a presentation later on in the agenda. That, Forrest Westall is also here to present. Thanks for joining us, Whit. I'd like to also acknowledge Ms. Ann Franklin, who's here, a former city council member with the city of Raleigh, and also currently serving on the board of Partners for Environmental Justice. So thank you for joining us. Okay, moving on to the high priority topics. At the council meeting this past Tuesday, Father Taylor presented the SMAC annual report and fiscal year 24 work plan, which was well received. Excellent job on the presentation. Nice job fielding some tough questions too. And council adopted the FY24 work plan as proposed. So that's very good news, and positive feedback as well overall.
Yeah, I think, for the number of times I've done this, this was the most engagement. I would say probably 10 minutes of conversation, which is unusual. It's good.
Yeah.
Council person Hatton asked about the sundowning of the 100% subsidy. And specifically said, it sounds like we as city council need to make sure we have money to make sure that continues. So that was also a good sign. And then the mayor commented that she received feedback from a developer stating that perhaps stormwater might be too restrictive and too expensive. So I'll follow up with her just to get some detail around that, and just to hear, because we take feedback however we receive it, and I can, update the commission on that. Thank you.
Quick update on our NPDES MS4 permit. The public comment period has been completed, and we had anticipated that the permit would be issued very soon, but an update as of this morning, we've received word from the North Carolina Department of Justice. Will not be able to respond to a question that we had submitted as part of our public comment on our own permit. And the question that we had was related to municipal authorities to conduct enforcement of permits that are issued by the state. And in the draft permit, there were a couple of areas that the state was looking for us to take more of an active Carolina NCG01, which is a construction permit that is required in North Carolina. And the state was looking for us to take more of a role in enforcing that permit. And then also related to industrial stormwater permits that were issued by North Carolina DEQ. They were also looking for us to play a role. Our question was whether we have the authority. And those of you familiar with the Dillon rule, which is basically a North Carolina rule, we're considered a Dillon rule state or a modified Dillon rule state. It basically says municipalities do not have any authorities except those specifically given to the municipality by the North Carolina legislature. So one of our comments back was the concern of whether we had the authority to do what DEQ was putting in our permit to do in those two specific areas. So the Department of Justice, we had a conversation with them a couple weeks ago, I think. They just got back to us today and said, we're still researching this question. We won't be able to get back to you in time to issue the permit by the time that your current permit expires, which I believe is October 18th. Does that sound right? It's very soon. Anyway, but they said, that's okay. You have done everything you needed to do up to this point. Your current permit will just continue as is until the new permit is issued and finalized. So just wanted to update you all on that. We thought our permit would be issued soon, but there is going to be a delay as the Department of Justice researches that issue.
Do you have any sense why this question might be coming up with authority right now? It sounds like the state is sort of asking Raleigh to take more of an authority over some of these discharges. And I wonder if that has to do with I wonder why that's coming up now.
Yeah, I guess I'll answer in two parts. The first one is, apparently this is the way, permits in other states are issued. So if you look at EPA guidance on how to issue MS4 permits from across the country, that is in the guidance that they would like municipalities to take a higher role in that. But I think what they have not looked at is, does North Carolina have the legislative structure to allow municipalities to do that? So I think that may be why there is a new permit writer at DEQ that we're working with this year. So I think he has been going back and looking at EPA guidance a little bit more strictly than was done maybe 5 years when our last permit was issued. And there are a number of other changes. So that this wasn't just a copy of our old permit. There were fairly significant changes in this permit, most of which we agreed with. These were just some that had come up. I do think, and this is my probably professional opinion, I think DEQ is running into a lot of staffing and resource issues, and they're finding it difficult to do the enforcement themselves. So they're probably in a way looking for more help too. But that's just my opinion. I think the bigger issue is the guidance from EPA in terms of how this is done in other states.
So the NCG01, excuse me, erosion control.
Yes, yeah. So it's erosion control, which we do have a delegated program, and we do erosion control. But there are some items that are normally in that North Carolina general permit that are above and beyond our authorities of how, what we enforce in our permit.
And was there anything else, buffers that they do? Buffers?
No, that's going to stay the same. Yeah, that is still a state authority, and that was going to stay the same.
Core and.
Correct. Yeah, no other changes like that. But good question. Any other questions on the MS4 permit? I would like to announce that the city's Department of Equity and Inclusion is sponsoring in partnership with PEJ an environmental justice advocacy and community action event that will be held on Saturday, October 21st at the Walnut Creek Wetlands Center. So encourage folks to attend if you're able. I think that will be a beneficial discussion on, and stormwater will be one of the many issues that are discussed in terms of environmental justice. Rainwater rewards, you will hear some project proposals that Justin Hartman will make later in the agenda, but there is a quarterly update in your materials. And if there are any questions, we can probably hold those until Justin comes up, but just wanted to remind you that that quarterly update is in there. There are some potential changes to the Rainwater Rewards 100% subsidy program. And didn't want to put anything on the table right now, but maybe some foreshadowing that it's off to a little bit of a slow start. I think we've got one completed project, some other pending projects, but we want to be mindful that that money, because it's ARPA money, needs to be encumbered by the end of the calendar year 2024. So we don't want to wait too late into 2024 because it takes some time from the time the projects are started until they get encumbered. So we're closely looking at the rate of expenditure. And some of the ideas are, right now, there's a map of disproportionately impacted areas that residents must be in order to qualify. We may want to consider expanding the size of that area, or perhaps even dropping that and only leaving the income and thresholds to participate. Just some ideas we're throwing out. So just wanted to give some foreshadowing. That's something we're watching closely. We'll bring back any specific proposals to you for feedback, but obviously with plenty of time to ask for feedback before we make any changes. And then I wanted to acknowledge, very proud of our stormwater team, the statewide American Public Works conference, stormwater management conference, was in Charlotte a couple of weeks ago. And our team had 4 presentations at that conference. So made a great showing, presentations on a number of issues related to our water quality program, related to rainwater rewards program, related to alluvial decoder project. And there's another one I'm forgetting. My apologies, but team did a great job, represented our program very, very well. And then lastly, done today. Backwards. Later. Very much. Any questions for Wayne? Okay. We'll move on to the R3 projects overview.
Yeah. I'm on the website and see that, see if you're eligible on what you say, but I don't see declaration of 100%.
At the very bottom. At the very bottom, say 100% subsidy program.
There should be a hot link on there, and then it will take you to another site that talks more detail about 100% subsidy.
I think it says 100% funding opportunities.
Yeah, I'll get into it, but I mean, that's a good point. It's not obvious to me right now either, yeah, so we may want to put another button or two in here. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We all acknowledge the beauty of the city's website, so that's.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Wayne, for that introduction. You went into a few of the items that I was already prepared to go through. So if there's any questions on those, let me know. But I'll want to circle back just real briefly to the quarterly update. The project that the commission approved in August was approved by City Council on September 5th. So that's the Crabtree Boulevard Gateway Plaza project. So that one was successfully approved by City Council. So, and we already talked about the 100% funding pilot program, about how we're considering putting the map on hiatus and leaving the income rent thresholds in place along with the nonprofit eligibility. So moving on to the projects, we have 7 projects for you here today. We're going to move through them as efficiently as possible to answer your questions, but at the same time, not to chew up the entire time block that we have. As you probably noticed, the request, if all projects are approved today, we would be left with a very small remaining balance for the program. So staff has been very proactive in that regard. We've already identified some additional funding to help sustain the program through the remainder of the fiscal year. And we have a target date of the November 7th council meeting to approve that transfer. So I imagine that question probably would have come up. So if approved, we do have a plan in place to go ahead and refund the program moving forward. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Stephen. We're on the gauntlet of 7 rain garden applications.
Yeah, I'll try to move quickly, Stephen, please ask any questions as needed. And also with permission to Reverend Taylor, if you want to have all the projects approved at the end, or I can go.
Let's do it individually and just for the commission. So when we go through these, if all approved, he said there's just a small amount of money left. He said there's a way for us to still approve some in the future.
Yes, sir. So as of November 7th, so we have a plan in place to replenish Raleigh Rainwater Awards as of November 7th. So we would have a few weeks there where we would not have funding, but we would be able to pick the pending applications back up and be able to entertain future applications as well. So it was recognized as the applications came in, and that's why we were proactive in that regard. Yes, ma'am.
Are there many projects in the pipeline?
There are currently 2 completed applications in the queue that we held off this, that held out of this meeting, both for time purposes and for funding purposes. And so that was the main thing that triggered us requesting that additional. We do have a lot of talk about other pending projects, so it's a good problem to have, I think. That includes both sides of the fence, the 100% funding. There's a lot of talk and chatter around pending applications, and we actually have some other traditional projects. One thing to add to Stephen's intro is we have ranked all the projects at the end on a slide, if you would like to see where they rank by the nitrogen metric. Compared against all previously approved projects.
Yep.
What is the funding level that you'll replenish?
We are on the fence between $100,000 to $200,000. So 100 was as of this morning, 200 was as of about 20 minutes ago when I saw an email. So imagine it's gonna land somewhere between there. It's worth, we're gonna see how this meeting goes, and we'll see what comes out of it, but we can have an answer for you by next meeting.
Nicola?
Yeah, and what is the sustainability of that funding source? I know it's maybe it's just thinking next year, is that gonna impact next year's lot, or you just want to understand that before?
I'm excited to say that I think because of the performance of the program, that we have already triggered a conversation to increase funding from the traditional 250,000 up to around, I've heard early numbers around 350,000. That does come from our CIP budget. And as Wayne stated before in this forum, that there is confidence that we can continue to fund it as long as the program can find need for it.
Thanks for clarifying.
So just for the commission, how do you feel about this? Do you want to wait till the end to rank? Because if we do go through this, then all the money is spent, of course, there will be money added. Want to check the pulse of this group? Or does it matter?
I mean, I can ask the question too as I get through the first one, so you can see a typical example.
What do y'all think?
Usually,
Okay, we'll do that. Let's go.
All right, yeah, feel free to stop me as needed. All right, well, I'm going to present 4, and then Justin will present 3. It's located in the Pigeon House Branch watershed, which qualifies for the 90% cost share reimbursement. This is a 395 square foot rain garden, so fairly large one, comparable. This is the general project design They are capturing all of their rooftop and the majority of their driveway and walkways. Next photos will demonstrate that. And the goal is to treat 3,890 square feet of impervious surface. So these three photos attempt to capture the project. So as you can see, the rooftop to the left of that house is that driveway that slopes towards that back corner, and this is the back corner, which, as you can tell, he's already attempted to manage a lot of the runoff and erosion occurring to no effect. And so a lot of that water is pouring right underneath his fence and going into his neighbor's yard. So overall, this is a great project that's going to attempt to treat the first 1 inch of rain from all of his impervious surfaces. This is the cost breakdown. Labor is 15,000. Soil plantings, mulch, materials and piping is 10,750. So as you can see, here's the total cost, project cost, which is the sum of those two line items. And then the cost share breakdown of 90% and 10%. Fluid removal chart. We are removing 0.66 pounds annually of nitrogen. And here are these cost metrics as you've seen in the past. So this is the cost total nitrogen reduced per year and the TSS reduced per year. I would say that's fairly in the mean, a little bit slightly above the mean of all projects for rain gardens. 3704 Bryn Mawr Court. This is in the Simmons Branch watershed, which is 75% zone. This is another 300 square foot rain garden. Or excuse me, fairly large rain garden. Here's a general project design that's designed to capture 3,000 square feet of impervious surface. So as you can see, there's a driveway, walkway, and rooftop that all goes to one rain garden in the back right corner. Also to note, not on this map, but right on the fence line to the north is a sanitary sewer pipe. I didn't have a plat map, so I wasn't able to present that, but we've already confirmed with email that they will stay out of that easement, that maintenance easement. There's plenty of space for that. So top left is just a general photo of his properties. It's a little hard to see because a lot of the tree canopy, but you can see to the left of his driveway plus the rooftop. And a lot of his drainage goes to his front doorway with this small pathway, and it has a small circular drain to the left. So a lot of his downspouts will be bypassing this area, and some of the walkway and driveway will be collecting. All of it is going to be collected and diverted to that back right corner, the northeast corner of this property. And this is that general photo of that area. Cost breakdown. Total is 7,734. As you can see, that 75 to 25% cost share breakdown, and per his estimate, the two line item costs.
Why's the other one cost so much?
Yeah, it's this one was quite an interesting scenario because he was getting high costs, upwards of almost 17,000. And that was pretty typical, and he was having a hard time getting 3 bids, so we pushed back on him, and he was able to find one bidder who was significantly less. And he was a little, to be honest, per the conversations we had, he's a little nervous about the bidder. So, but we had, in several instances with this phase of presentation, we've had to push back to try to get homeowners to present 3 bids. So, to answer your question, I don't quite know why this one is so low, because we reviewed his bid and the details within it, and it encompassed what the project said. I think he might have just been low bidding. But the other bids were higher in the comparison charts, a representative of other projects, even other projects that I'm presenting today.
What's the scenario, partway through the project, if they do come back with a higher cost afterwards?
That's a great question.
About that before. But-
Yeah, no, it's good to review that. So we approve up to a certain amount, and that certain amount is the lowest of those three bids.
Okay.
So even if that final invoice is 2 times higher, or whatever it might be, we pre-approved up to the original amount, so we can only approve that amount.
And there's no opportunity for the homeowner to come back and ask for additional assistance?
I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, I'd say it has not been done, not saying that they couldn't.
Yeah.
The policy, as you'll see from one of the ones I presented, does give the commission discretion to review an application after the project is started, as long as the application is submitted within 1 year of completion. So theoretically, someone could run into problems, get a big final invoice, and come back as a new project after construction and pretty much withdraw that first approval. You know, there's a way to do it. We have just never seen that happen.
Yeah.
And hopefully all goes well the first time, obviously, but
Yeah,
anyway, just.
No, like I said. yeah, great question.
One thing to add, if you recall, there was a project this last month or in August that they had gotten approval, waited probably a little long to act on that estimate and that amount, and realized it was going to be too expensive. So they withdrew that project, and I brought it back last meeting as a brand new project, but was a slightly higher cost to accommodate that change. So that might be the closest example.
The only amount of this, the contractor, what do you have one?
We have a list of contractors that have successfully completed a project before, so it's not any recommendation, but it is a list, yeah. Yeah. All right, fluid removal cost breakdown, once again, 0.51 total nitrogen, and 4.45 pounds of total suspended solids. As you can see with that low cost and that metric, it's more than half of the previous, project. Yeah, very good metric. Right, next project, 2025 Rabbit Run, which is in the Walnut Creek watershed, 75% reimbursement zone. This is a smaller rain garden at 135 square feet. Project design treats 1,350 square feet of impervious surface. So essentially, it's roughly half of his rooftop plus some of his driveway. Here's the house. So like I said, roughly half this end of the rooftop and these downspouts, partially of this driveway that flows to the back corner. As you can see in the left photo here, that green area, the flow will flow directly to the rain garden. And you can see some of the side driveway, top right photo. Cost breakdown, 10,500. Two cost estimate line items are to the left based off the estimate and the cost breakdown for the cost share. Significantly lower fluid reduction, so 0.23 pounds reduced annually for total nitrogen, and to 4.45 pounds of total suspended solids. So as you can see, this metric is high comparably, but it is below the $7,000 per pound total nitrogen. And lastly, for me, is 3327 Cheswick Drive. This is located on the north side in Big Branch, 75% zone. Once again, that comparable 291 square foot rain garden. So this project design is going to have, let me go over here. It's going to have 2 rain gardens, one located to the left and one located to the front right there, for a total of 291 square feet of rain garden. to treat 1,914 square feet of impervious surface, so a little oversized. Total cost for this is $21,088. Their cost estimate broke down to 2 rain gardens, and their labor and effort. So 11,047, 5,754. This portion of the concrete is going to be removed and replaced with that footprint of that rain garden. So those costs are represented here, this concrete removal. And then you had a separate line item, or the company had a separate line item for plantings. Total nitrogen removal rate similar to the first 2 I presented at 0.41 pounds. And total suspended solids is 6.94 pounds. This is a fairly high, this is a very high metric in comparison with other rain gardens at 51,434 pounds reduced per year. Still under the cap of 7,000.
Good question. When it's evaluated, I know they're gonna split out separately, but is there, as far as the total nitrogen removal and kind of being able to rank it, were those evaluated separately or is this? I was
Yeah.
sure if there's one that was, stellar and the other one not so much, or they're pretty equivalent.
No, I mean, we use a simple method, so it's essentially an impervious surface calculation. So it's an evaluation of what impervious surface is going and what sort of device is treating it.
Okay, so it wouldn't really matter. Got it. Thanks.
Well, just to elaborate on that, we will treat them as separate. So we'll see, hey, how much this one removes this drainage area, how much this one removes this drainage area, and then we'll add them together and present it to the commission as one site. So this is one project, that's a total removal across the site, across both rain gardens. Truth be told, one's the workhorse, one may be less than workhorse, but I think it's all contingent because of the simple method on the fact that which one has the bigger drainage area to be the workhorse. Which I look forward to giving you an update at the end talk about the metric as
Yeah.
well, so.
Another great question that'll lead Justin off really well.
And then are you concerned, like there was one that looked like it was like right next to the house, it used to be that you wanted them pulled away?
You mean this one, for example? Yeah, we request that they have 10 feet off their footing. And so it might just be the roughness of the drawing, but we communicate that. And worst case too, even if they build it somewhat close, I would say, because the natural slope is going towards the stream to the south. Any sort of surface or subsurface flow will be going in that direction.
The previous one, Rabbit Run, you had an asterisk by total, and I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I apologize. I meant to
So
disclose.
what's that asterisk?
So, in relation to, I'm sorry, Nicola, yeah, her question. So they petitioned because they had, a very, very low bid in comparison to their other bids. They petitioned that one of those be removed and they find another one. Because of the lack of confidence they had with that contract. So I have justification. I can provide that for you. It's in my bullpen at the bottom here. But yeah, we went back and forth with them and saying, hey, you disclose this, you need to accept that value. And for example, 10,500 was the newest low bid that they got. The next, I believe the next, and I have a graph at the end here. The next highest bid was in that $13,000 to $17,000 range, and they were bidding at $5,000. So, typically we would say, hey, this is the basis for reimbursement, you disclose this. But they gave justification, and I did want to present that to you. That's true. And I apologize, I missed that asterisk, so I appreciate you asking.
So the Braemar family or group did not request it.
They did actually requested, but at the time we were going back and forth and they accepted the end result based on conversations with Justin, that they would use that $7,000+ bid. This was actually a pretty good exercise that Justin and I went through, going through our the legal side of this, and what was approved with council. All right, Cheswick, breakdown. Good. All right, I'll hand it off to Justin.
Yeah, and just for the commissions, just to remind the commission of what our policy does require. It says in the narrative of the policy that for projects over $5,000, we need to get multiple bids. It's vague. So we applied a procurement rule guidance to get 3 bids, what we would do if we were doing city business. So where the nuance lives is how we do our due diligence and how we confirm that the applicant does their due diligence. And so that is where, that's where a lot of times we'll get proof of 3 estimates, and then we'll look at that metric, which is the language of this program and how we communicate these projects to you guys. And so at the end of the day, the metric is really that main comparison factor. But just know that's I would say the inside baseball of what occurs when you see a final number up here. There's that conversation. We need 3 estimates. We need proof of due diligence. We need to document our due diligence. Look at the metric on the slideshow. So just a quick jump in there. I got 3 more rain gardens. We're almost in the clear here. Coronado Drive, Mine Creek. I have a small one, a medium sized one, and a large one. This is the medium sized one that I'm going to present to you today. It's actually 2 rain gardens. You'll see one up here near the right of way, but I confirmed that it's not going to be in the right of way. And there's one in the back right corner, which is going to be near a drainage easement, but not in the drainage easement. So I have confirmation of that and broken up drainage areas on each side. You'll see the home here, some driveway, some roof going to the back, just gutters going to the front. Breakdown, right at $22,000. Comparable to some of the ones we've seen the whole spectrum here today. It's about a little past half of what our approvable nitrogen metric cap is currently at 7,000. So that's Coronado Drive. So if that was the medium sized one, this is my large one, 418 square feet. That's a significantly sized rain garden for somebody's yard. This applicant has a pretty large yard, big side yard. And so what you have is a lot of driveway, about half a roof and a patio all going to this point. Otherwise that water goes down the hill on the neighbors, on the streets. So this is capturing it up closer to the source. You can see all that asphalt actually comes through this area. This is on the way. If you're gonna do a future walking tour, you'd walk through those gates and it would open up to a rain garden. Try to document some of the impervious surface that this property has and where it would go. Total cost, right at 25,000. See the breakdown, 75%, 25%. Low metric, primarily because of the amount of impervious surface. I mean, you're capturing more than almost all residential rain gardens, over 4,000 square feet. And moving to my last one, this one is the one unique one of the 7 we're presenting today. This one was completed prior to approval. It was completed in July. So as stated earlier, the commission has the discretion to review one that's been completed or started prior to approval. They were on a timeline with some landscaping work and some renovations where they needed to move forward regardless of the city schedule. So they went ahead and moved forward. It was partially DIY, partially utilizing that on-site contractor. As you see, it's a small rain garden, 110 square feet. They are capturing part of the driveway in one side of their house. And if you see it at the top left corner of the diagram, the rain garden's in the far back or far rear of the property. It is about 6 cubic feet too small for the total volume going there. So how we handle projects like this that end up being too small, or not too small, smaller than what we typically would like to see, is then we back up and only give credit to the nitrogen metric and to all the water quality numbers with what they're actually treating with that. So that you'll see that reflected in the nitrogen metric. So instead of, let's say they have, in this case, I think it's 1,400 square feet of runoff going there, we're giving them credit for their 1,100 square feet that they actually can treat. So you have a lot of, you have pipe downspouts, you have a lot of impervious surface on a driveway that goes to a drain that then goes to the rear. Here is the rain garden completed. I was out there after one of the big rain events in July, pop-up storm, completely dewatered, looked good. So you see very low cost, a lot of DIY work. You can see where they got the contractor involved. A little bit of plumbing. I think they might have done that with the contractor as well, but the rest was design work, and all the plantings and stonework was actually DIY by the applicant itself, or herself. And I didn't even make my joke. I don't know how to pronounce the street name either. So my mind wants to say male so badly. But you see the metrics very low. That's primarily because in this case, it's because of low cost. And yeah, any questions? I wanted to show just these last two slides before we get into the individual ones. All rain gardens, you only get one slide on maintenance today. It's all the same throughout. We spent way too much time figuring out how to give this information to you guys in a meaningful way. This is a comparison chart for how these rank on across the 115 approved rain gardens, where these rank on cost effectiveness based on the nitrogen metric. So of 115 projects, Fire and Bar Court is the 11th most cost effective from a pollutant removal standpoint. This is the third least cost effective, second, third least cost effective. So this might be a good slide to stop on as y'all if take any questions or consider any or all the projects presented. Let me make sure that.
Do you have a cap on that number that you accept? 70 grams or something a pound?
Yeah, so good question. So when we reference the nitrogen metric cap, the commission decided several years ago, I want to say it was during COVID, 2020, 2021, they decided you take this number and divide it by the number of maintenance years the project would be in the ground. Well, just so happens all these, except for Mile Street, of course, it's the one I don't know to say, is 10-year maintenance terms. That's a 5-year maintenance term. So if you want to get the cap metric, you would divide that by 10, 5. That'll give you a number. So for instance, right here, that's the number you saw on the table. That's our
Divided by 5.
yeah, so that's that number divided by 5. What the commission decided a couple of years back is that $7,000 per pound of nitrogen removed over the life of the project was the cap. Anything above that, and we would have to reduce the amount of eligibility of reimbursement that they would receive. So that's all, that has been that cap that we referenced. It is this number divided by the amount of time they have in their maintenance term. So what you're seeing here, which we could add another column next time so you can see the cap. But typically, when we're standing in front of you guys, it is a divided by 10 will get you that. So easy math, thankfully. But if you were to look at it through that perspective, you just take the last digit off. Anything over 7,000 would be capped by the program without any action by anybody here. And you can also see why they rank where they do. Does that answer your question, Josh?
So the Cheswick is the second most expensive that you presented. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Third,
Third?
Yeah.
splitting hairs though.
But so close.
Yes.
What do commissioners think? I mean, typically we don't spend as much time on this. We also don't have 7. And we also have not been in a place where you're the 4th month in the fiscal year and you completed money for a project. And so it makes me think about, do we need another metric, another way of looking at these projects and perhaps in planning forward so we don't find ourselves in the position we are now. It's good that there will be money added. I feel like we're blaming the kicker for missing the field goal at the end of the game. without considering what happened in the first quarter. So comments about funding for these 7 projects.
That last one seems expensive, and it's just an observation on a new house. It's a great irony that you see a brand new house put in, they have a big driveway, and then get money from the city to put in a little rain garden in the backyard. When the problem is the big driveway, not the rain garden, and it's not fixing the problem. Just an observation for the.
The DI, the do-it-yourself was interesting. Do we have many projects where residents, you have the skill set or help in that respect?
No, I would say no. I would say more so on the cistern side. And even if we did, y'all would rarely see those in this format. You would get a quarterly report on those. So you would see it on the staff level approval and the lower cost projects and mostly cisterns, rarely for people equipped to be able to excavate out. I think it's the timing of have somebody doing work elsewhere on the property and capitalizing on that, which is what the individual here did.
If I could maybe just make a comment response to Barrett's comment about a new house. So these always have to be above and beyond any regulatory requirements. These projects cannot be used to meet regulatory requirements. So I'm guessing, and I don't know the specifics of that new house, but I'm guessing that that was a redevelopment and it was on a small enough lot that it didn't meet the threshold to have any stormwater control requirements.
Yeah, that's
Probably just, I just wanted to clarify that from everyone's perspective. So these are always above and beyond regulatory.
Yeah, I would say too, regarding Cheswick, that it is high, but I would say one reason why it's high is potentially because of that concrete removal cost.
Yeah, you got 2 of them, you got concrete removal.
Yeah.
So they could easily go back if you wanted to say they were a price point. Look at it again for next year round, wait for that.
Sounds like Barrett's suggestion is that we approve the top 6, but not the 7.
Yeah, I'm not saying deny number 7, but if we think it's a, timing issue with funding and they can tighten it up, make it more affordable, I don't think there's anything wrong in asking them to do that.
I would just concur with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It is.
You did.
Yeah.
So,
It's
the total cost of that one.
Okay.
Gonna jump real quick and make people busy here.
right there. Well, back. One thing that might play into it, just what I've seen, I know Steve is more the expert on this one. You are excavating 2 separate holes in the ground, 2 separate projects that might pick it up.
Is that for aesthetics for the homeowner or is that?
Is it
Yeah.
drainage?
No, I think it's confined area, so. So their property line, they're squeezing this rain garden into this area and obviously this might have more space, but I'm sure there's a part of it where it's aesthetics, don't get me wrong.
Is that the house in the picture?
Yes,
I don't think that's the house. That's what's the other thing really confusing back. And it's connected to the house and all sorts of stuff. That's not the house.
Yeah. It's in the woods, that house.
maybe I missed,
The chest,
maybe I missed that.
what's your, what's it, 3327. Cheswick. Drive.
Yeah, because that might just totally be my mistake, because this was me taking something off Google Earth, because they just presented their drawings.
That's next door.
That's next door.
That's
Okay.
to the left of it. Their house is in the trees and, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the house next door.
Yeah, my
It's just a picture, not the picture. Yeah, the start to see.
We've had a lot of discussion, but I think they fit in the parameters of the program currently.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to not approve any of these. But I would say, I mean, just looking in the future to have a price cap on there. That's more realistic, or,
like a total cost price cap or.
I mean, I guess you want to do it per pound of nitrogen. like yours, this one's just under it.
It is under,
Yeah, you're talking about this,
step down.
Yeah.
cost versus pollutant metric.
I would like to make a motion to vote to approve all these right now.
All set?
Yeah. If y'all are ready.
So moved. Just make it official. You want to, so, Bear take the move. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Luann, all in favor? No opposition? Thank you.
Well, before we yield the floor, I would like to report, and it stems off some of the comments tonight or today. I'm excited to report, we are working with an outside consultant over the next 10 months or so. It's called the R3 Enhancement Project. We hope to bring Raleigh Rainwater Wards up to speed with some of the pollutant calculation tools like the SNAP tool that other programs are using, moving away from the simple method. And we also have tasked this consultant with bringing forth recommendations for the program on how they're reviewed, approved, and compared. And we hope to get the commission's feedback on those recommendations. We're looking at January through April timeframe, probably with 2 meetings with input from the commission on that. So we look forward to reporting back.
Thanks.
All right. Camp Pond Dam project.
Good afternoon. I'm David Kaiser with the CIP Stormwater Group of Raleigh. And with me today is Maureen Harris, our engineer consultant with AECom. Today, we're going to present the highlights of a presentation we previously presented to you on a state-regulated high-hazard dam called Camp Pond. I'm just curious. It looks like we got a couple new faces. Who missed the presentation this past August? Was everyone here for that? Yeah. Okay. Today's presentation might not be quite as long. We're going to cover more of the highlights. We did an engineering study to evaluate the alternatives that would bring this dam into compliance with dam safety requirements and consistent with the lake preservation policy. And that's how this original presentation came about. Just a quick overview on the presentation. I'm going to kick it off, show the need of the project, some of the constraints, and turn it over to Maureen. She's going to talk about some of the alternatives that we've evaluated. We'll hit on cost and schedule. We'll open it up to questions and have a discussion with y'all. And at the end of the presentation, we'll look and for a motion to support the city staff recommendation to move forward with alternative 1, which is keeping the pond in its current configuration as pond. Camp Pond is located in the northwest side of Raleigh. It's just south of Olmsted Park. I don't know if you can see the green area just there. That is Olmsted. We're just outside the Beltline. It's both in the incorporated areas of the city and also the unincorporated areas of Wayne County. So it's, you can see the dark gray area is Raleigh and that lighter area is the county. There's 5 owners to this dam. 4 private owners and 1 public. That's City of Raleigh. We own and maintain the right of way of Richland Drive. Should there be a breach? There's roughly 50 properties that would be isolated, would not be able to get out of the subdivision, nor could emergency crews get in. So the do nothing alternative is really not an option for us on this one. We did investigate other options to come in outside of this Richland Drive area, and none of those were possible. So Camp Pond is a high hazard class C dam. I'm sorry, I didn't talk without you. It is a high hazard class C dam because of its potential for loss of life. There are 3 structures located immediately downstream of Richland Drive. Over here on the left side of this image, on the right side shows 6 homes subject, or they're inside the inundation zone, should there be a breach of that dam. And those are located a couple thousand feet downstream. In December of 2021, we received a notice of deficiency from dam safety. There were 4 things that they pointed out that they were concerned about: trees growing on the embankment itself, debris clogging both the riser and the barrel that leaves the riser. I'll show you some images of that in a second. And the deterioration of corrugated metal pipe that is the barrel connected to the riser. It's in very good shape. And at the outfall of the auxiliary spillway, which are quad 60-inch pipes, it's scattering out and that concrete pad is exposed. So here's some images. There's the corrugated metal pipe that's perched. That has a bottom that's falling out. Here's some of the woody debris. This is the quad 60-inch barrels with scour occurring and potentially jeopardizing the function of those culverts. You can see water flowing through the bottom of the culvert. This culvert is corrugated metal. It's failing. It's rusted out and well past its life expectancy. And that's the urgency of why we're really here today, is that culvert itself. So again, an engineering study was performed by our engineering consultant. Alternatives were evaluated, and I'm going to turn it over to Maureen. She's going to share with you some of the formal notice.
Again. Well, last time we were here in August, we slogged together through some of the technical details, and I don't want to put you all through that again, but I will revisit the alternatives at a high level since it's been a couple months and we want to kind of refresh everybody. And if anyone does want to get back into the technical details, we're happy to do that as well. So David mentioned some of the key drivers of this study were related to the notice of deficiency for the dam, so the deficient conditions present at the dam today. But there's also some additional considerations that are common to all of the alternatives that we wanted to share with you to kind of emphasize the complexity of this study and how, regardless of which alternative you move forward with, these are really important considerations kind of driving the engineering design, especially as we move forward from this study phase into the design of our selected alternative and then the construction. The first one being that no matter what option we choose, we are not going to get away from the fact that the current dam spillways are undersized. They're not just in poor condition, but they are undersized based on current dam safety standards. They do not pass the current regulated design storm without the dam overtopping. The second one is the issue that David pointed out with Richland Drive being the primary access road for residents that live just downstream or just down the road from the dam. There's about 45 or 50 properties there. They need to be able to get to their homes, to their places of employment, to school. So it's going to be one of the main driving factors during the design and construction is making sure we're able to maintain that access safely for those residents. A third consideration is utility relocation is going to be huge. There's many utilities that we're already aware of because we've had the utilities marked as part of the survey during the design phase. Just to name a few, there's overhead power, there's gas, and there's water. So when we go to construct whichever design we implement, you're not going to have to just relocate those utilities, but there's going to be the need to maintain service for those utilities throughout the duration of construction for those residents. The fourth is the underlying conditions under the dam are also very interesting and uniquely challenging because there's a known presence of bedrock. If you go out to the site, you can visibly see the outcrops of bedrock everywhere. It's actually really pretty, but very complex for construction. As part of the initial design phase or the initial study phase, we did perform a few geotechnical borings. So we did 3 borings along the crest of the dam to try to get a general sense of the nature of the bedrock, what direction is it going, can it be drilled or not be drilled, and how might it impact the implementation of the project. as part of the design, we'll propose to go in along the actual proposed alignment of the dam and do some additional borings to better characterize that bedrock. We've had some conversations with contractors already, and they've discussed the need for potentially some vibration monitoring because of the proximity of the residents nearby. So a lot of different factors come into play here with the bedrock. And then finally, last but not least, Richland Creek is just downstream of the dam. So I won't say that they may, I would say it's extremely likely that any enhancements or improvements we make to the dam will encroach on the designated regulatory floodways. So there will need to be some additional coordination with FEMA to make sure that we're meeting all of their requirements too as we move forward with the project. So this one is what we call alternative one. So this is the design that keeps the pond in its current condition. We're not going to make any changes to the water surface. The pond is essentially going to look the same as it does today, but with some serious improvements to the dam infrastructure to make it safe and bring it into compliance with dam safety standards. So what that will entail will be removing that corrugated metal failing pipe, which is the current principal spillway, and replacing it with a much larger box culvert so based on our initial study and the modeling that went behind that, we're looking at likely around an 8x6 reinforced concrete box culvert. And then the other feature is that we need to get a longer effective weir length to be able to meet dam safety standards and not have the dam overtop during the design storm. So that will require a longer length of weir. And how we're proposing to do that is with this labyrinth configuration. So you effectively get a longer weir length without taking up a whole lot more footprint. So it's kind of an effective way, especially for a smaller dam like Ham Pond, to get that greater flow length in a smaller space. And then this is, we did these artistic renderings largely to help support the public meeting. So there was a public meeting earlier this year with the property owners immediately surrounding the dam and then people from the larger community. I feel like for a public meeting, especially about something that maybe people aren't as excited about as a dam, I feel like it was really well attended, hopefully Wayne agrees. This largely helped get our message across that, you know, this is what we think it will kind of look like a few years down the road, maybe some, you know, wetland vegetation starting to fill in. We know that sedimentation in the pond is an issue, so this kind of reflects that. I will say that one thing that we would propose to do with the design is to move this principal spillway a little bit farther away from the auxiliary spillway. We think like with the size of the excavation that will be needed for that larger spillway, we'll likely want to just give us a little bit more space between the auxiliary spillway and the principal spillway for constructability purposes. But the one thing you'll notice is the lack of trees. So dam safety has a lot of concerns about trees, especially large trees on dam embankments and how they might impact the integrity of the embankment. So very likely that a lot of the trees that are here presently will have to go during the construction. And it also helps facilitate maintenance in the long term. It's really hard to inspect a dam if you can't see it because it's covered in trees. Okay, this is alternative number 2. You might remember this one. This is what we call the stream restoration alternative. So this one is quite different from keeping the pond, obviously. And then this is kind of the overhead or the plan view of what's being proposed. So this would include stream restoration measures, including some grade stabilization features to establish kind of a nice, stable, sinuous stream flow path, kind of what used to be there, you know, 50 or 60 years ago. And then what we would do is there would no longer be a riser structure on the principal spillway. We would be lowering that culvert all the way to the bottom of the current pond to allow kind of just the stream to reestablish and, you know, reestablish the stream through what is now the existing pond footprint. So we still have to have the spillway because we still have to pass the large design storm. The weir length does not change from the existing configuration. It's just extending the sidewalls of the weir and lowering it so that water can get into it near the bottom of the pond. So that's kind of what's shown here. So you just have kind of an open culvert instead of that riser structure that we're used to seeing there. And this is the artistic rendering that goes along with this one to kind of see, this is what we'd expect it to establish into over time, eventually filling in with kind of wetland vegetation. Hopefully a stable stream with some vegetation that requires eventually little maintenance over time. And then this is kind of like a little offline, a little bit of a deeper pool area that represents currently where the deepest part in the existing pond is. We propose keeping that just for a little bit more habitat enhancement, maybe a little bit of water quality benefit. Now, this is alternative 3, so this is what we term the hybrid alternative. It's kind of like a compromise between the pond and the stream restoration. It's more of like really a wetland alternative with a smaller pond. So a little bit of the stream restoration, and then it kind of opens up to a larger open water area. So it's like alternative 1 and alternative 2 combined with a smaller pond. And then with this one, kind of a similar configuration to alternative 1 with the 8x6 box culvert principal spillway, a smaller riser. And then compared to the current dam configuration, we would be lowering that spillway a little bit. So effectively creating a smaller pond with a lower water surface. And then again, the weir length would stay the same as the existing, but extending it to get closer to kind of the elevation that we want it to be at, where it's activating that weir more frequently. And this is the rendering that we did for that one. You see a little bit, kind of like a smaller pond, not as kind of a shocking change as seeing your pond turn into a stream, but kind of like a compromise where over the years, this would kind of become more filled in with wetlands. And when you have a larger storm coming through, maybe a little bit wetter. And then this is kind of a technical summary of the 3 alternatives side by side. So alternatives 1 and 3 incorporate an 8x6 culvert. Alternative 2, a slightly smaller one without the riser structure. Emergency or auxiliary spillway. Alternative 1, like I mentioned, with the labyrinth weir, has the longest weir length, and then 2 and 3 the same as existing conditions. And then the difference in hydrology is the pond stays the same with alternative 1. Alternative 2, the pond goes away, and alternative 3 is the smaller pond, to put it simply. And then this is a high-level cost comparison. This is also based on conversations we have with contractors, and unfortunately, it kind of reflects the reality of doing this kind of work today. And just, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity. Some of the major cost elements, the utility relocation, shoring, rock excavation, dewatering, all sorts of things. Traffic control is going to be a major one. We need to keep a lane of traffic open for the residents to be able to get to and from their homes. And then a kind of a high level estimate of the long-term O&M costs. Okay, so kind of a summary. All 3 alternatives provide the most important thing, which is public safety by addressing the notice of deficiency from dam safety. Public safety is the city's #1 concern. And then David will get into this a little bit more, but alternative 1 was the most strongly supported overwhelmingly by the co-owners and the community. And then I can step through this next part really quickly, but multi-criteria decision analysis is something we provided as part of this project to give sort of a more systematic approach to compare the alternatives instead of just saying, well, this is the resident's favorite, or this one costs more, let's just go with that. So this incorporates a lot of different elements aside from just the dam safety concerns and the public sentiment. We've got ongoing O&M costs, operation or capital cost, implementation timeline, some more eco benefits like water quality, habitat enhancement. And across all of these criteria, the pond preservation or alternative 1 ranked the highest. And I will pass it back to David, and we can come back and revisit any of these things if we have time at the end.
So I'm going to touch on schedule. We're looking for SMAC approval or authorization to move forward. Design for this project is about 12 months. That's something that we can control. That's that's something we've done in the past. We've had other projects similar, so we have an easy way to come up with that. Permitting is typically around 4 months for a dam like this. Construction, now that's something that has a variance. It just depends on when we start. If we're starting the wrong time of the year, it might take a little bit longer, but 12 to 18 months is generally a pond of this size or a dam of this size we take. So this is roughly the schedules. If we were to start in November of 2023, we would end construction roughly in the middle towards the end of 2026, August of 2026. So. The alternative one costs, we've got $5.8 million for the entire, based on preliminary estimates right now. $4.8 million in construction. And that design fee includes surveying and also includes 12 to 18 months of construction inspection time, and that's a fair amount of money. So I'm gonna wrap it up, and we're gonna turn it over to some questions and answers, and discussion if you've got any. So with that, I don't know,
Back to the slide, just for all the costs.
yeah,
Sorry, it's this one.
the 3 different alternatives.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, sorry, I had to switch this up. Thank you.
And the lower costs on the screen represent maintenance costs.
Thanks, I saw the, multi-criterion decision analysis, having that as the higher scores was a big problem. That was the cost for that. Thank you.
If I may, just for context, so this does fall into Scott Bryan, who's previously discussed our lake management evaluation program. Under that program, where we're looking at lakes and considering alternatives, those are brought to the commission with a recommendation. Here, the recommendation is to leave the lake essentially in its current configuration. In that situation, if the commission concurs with that, then we can proceed with the design and proceed. Only if there's a different configuration that's recommended. For example, you may recall the Upper Durant Lake. The recommendation was to not have it be a lake, but have it be a constructed wetlands. In that situation, then the commission would make a recommendation that would go to council if it's a different configuration for council's approval before proceeding. But in this situation, the configuration is recommended to stay the same. So if the commission concurs, that would be the end of this process.
So the pot of money this comes from.
Yeah, so this is is proposed under our CIP. This is one of the projects that we have mentioned, a series of larger projects that are really above and beyond what our traditional pay-go have allowed. So this would be one of the projects that we would be looking to use a debt service funding for in upcoming years. We do have the money budgeted to proceed with the design now, but in terms of the construction, that would have to come from a future debt service, which we are working with our finance department to proceed and gaining concurrence and with that process and have a lot of a buy-in so far. So we're confident that will move forward with a debt funding model for this and several other projects. Those lines is another one I'm familiar with. Glenwood Creston, I think, is another one of failing stormwater pipe. So all of those we're looking at that FY 26, FY 27, that a number of these larger construction projects will be hitting our CIP.
Do you have a sense why the community preferred option 1?
Sense.
Yeah, why the community preferred the first option?
So I think it's coming down to aesthetics. We do have Michael Kerrigan who's with us from the community. We did have a public meeting. I'll let you talk. When we met, the vast majority wanted both inside the 4 property owners that own it and also outside of that group. The vast majority wanted to keep it. And I think it was just for aesthetics.
Yeah, it's the character of the community. People walk the community a lot. They like the appearance of the pond. People move there because they like the pond.
It definitely is an amenity to the subdivision. I don't know if you want to add anything, Michael.
The city end.
No, we have kids that come fish and ride canoes and,
external and everything else, so it's kind of a community fund. We kind of monitor the kids that come in, and, we teach them how to fish and everything else, so it's kind of been a good bringing together for the real.
Thank you.
You have a question, Barry?
Yeah, sorry, is the pond owned by the city entirely?
So, no, there's 5 property owners, 4 private, and those are the 4 that are on either side of Richland Drive. And we own and maintain the street, and the street makes up part of the embankment. So we got pulled into that as an owner. So we definitely have liability in terms of failure should the dam breach. But we are one of 5 property owners.
And with the 5.8 million, is any of that land, lake restoration, or is it dam, is it any part of the embankment, besides the things we saw kind of in red? What's in the cost? I mean, is it a whole lake mediation, or is it just the dam there?
So there's a lot of components that make it up on me, because we said that there's the 8x6 box that's gonna, a couple $100,000. The temporary road that we'd have to construct is hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are not gonna be removing sediment as part of this project. That costs up to millions of dollars depending on how much you remove. That is not part of what we're doing, but traffic control is a significant cost on this project, $500,000, having that road sort of partially closed for a year. So the cost, shoring is a massive cost, approaching $750,000.
So I guess my question is, the dam itself in good shape, the core, the structure of the dam?
It's a good question. I mean, so we did a slope stability analysis with our geotech team, and the dam is stable. And that's just what we can see, because it's so overgrown with trees. It's hard for dam safety to get a thorough inspection of the structure itself. But our assessment, just based on our initial geotech, is that it's at least the dam is stable. It's more the infrastructure of the dam, the spillways that have the deficiencies.
I guess as the trees come off of it, as parts are rebuilt, or does this cost go up? Because we find that the dam itself is built in some 20% contingency, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a possibility, but this cost already incorporates regrading like the downslope of the dam, for example, to this kind of shallower, what would be considered a more stable slope, and then adding some stabilization measures like riprap to make it easier to maintain and prevent scour, things like that.
That'd be one of the big design challenges for this project, is we are Richland Creek, it's on the downstream side, and we have a lot of scours that you saw in some of those photos. So that will be a big part of our cost, is coming up with a outfall that is stable at both the quad 60s and the main as well spillway. So
And it's a challenge because of the sheer elevation difference between the pond itself. Where Richland Creek presently is, there's quite a steep drop off there, so it's definitely a major design consideration.
you have a question?
I answered my question, I see that here,
Okay.
the utilities or gas.
Would you scroll back to the decision table? I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about the water quality and habitat piece and how those numbers. Surprised to see that for water quality, the stream restoration piece was so low, and so I'm just wondering how that ended up that way.
I guess for that one, our consideration was more on the retention aspects of a pond versus a flowing stream. So for example, the pond ranked higher than the stream because it has more retention time. So with that consideration, that would be more like a TSS benefit, the settling. And then the wetland, we gave, for the hybrid option, we gave the highest water quality because of kind of the combination of more retention and the vegetation for possible nutrient benefits. As you can see, there's like a little bit of subjectivity, or they're a little bit open to interpretation, so it's kind of hard to apply uniformly. It kind of depends on which water quality target you're trying to attain, but we try to keep it a little bit bigger picture, but also be kind of a systematic ranking tool.
That makes sense, and I think that's important to know too, is that depending on what parameter we're looking at, the water quality outcome would be quite different, which is of course tied to the habitat piece too, so that helps us understand, thank you.
All of the weighting factors selected for this.
Those were, I would say that those were selected kind of in conversation with the city about what we thought the greatest priorities were. So obviously the dam safety concerns.
Not.
Yeah, I mean, all of these were a little discussion where we advised and then they said, no, we don't really agree with everything. We should go with this.
Sure.
There's some flexibility and I will say that we did kind of play around with some of the weights and the outcome was still the same with the pond ranking the highest.
I just have one more question. I know we're running late on time. I think I remember from the last conversation, we talked about the sedimentation issue and how likely this is just something that is gonna continue. And I'm wondering if that is considered in part of the maintenance, sort of like future sediment removal, because at some point, this lake is gonna turn into a wetlands no matter what. And I just wonder if that's part of the maintenance or if that's just going to inevitably be the case with option one.
Yeah, I guess we could explore the option of providing, forebay and access, but it will not be part of the city's maintenance, or we don't have any expectations to, remove sediment now or in the future.
The issue of sedimentation is largely related to development in the contributing watershed, so I don't, we don't know right now what the rate of development is going to continue to be. There has been a lot of development historically, but is that going to continue? Because that would be a huge impact as to whether sediment continues to be an issue or is it beginning to stabilize? Maybe the city could answer that about as far as zoning or planned development in the watershed, but we don't know that, right? I don't know right now.
Any more questions? May I have a motion to approve? And, second? All in favor? Any opposition? You? Oh,
I don't think. It's small. That's a lot of money and. Somebody got caught holding the barrel, but I just don't.
what about you, John?
Yeah, same, that's a lot of money. Probably make $1 to get the bridge across the entire thing.
Oh, yeah, we looked at that. That would be way more, 10, yeah. Short.
Weird. I just don't, I mean, the water quality's been from it's a sediment pond right now. Like, what? I understand the high hazard dam issue. But the water quality is not getting any better out of this deal. We're fixing the hazard dam thing, but.
Is it potentially just, I mean, I guess maybe my thinking is like the liability issue. And I think, is it, if I'm just want to understand, with the all, with the kind of shared, it is on the city, but it's also shared responsibility with the owners as well, right? And so, I mean.
How's it shared right now? And the city can, let them get into the meetings. That's it. I mean, they have waterfront property and the city's holding all the liability. City owns the dam. The dam is the problem here, in a weird way. It's, I mean, they got set up, they got teed up the wrong way 30 years ago to own the dam.
I feel hesitant on it too, and then appreciative that you two sort of drew out more conversation. I think in terms of community needs, my inclination is to always side with what the community would like to see in their backyard. Also, I agree. I think there's better water quality outcomes that could come out of one of the other alternatives. my interests lie there as well, certainly in thinking about the long-term implications of allowing a sediment pond to keep collecting sediment. I wonder if that will be what the community actually wants in the long term. So I think it's a good question. I don't really know where the land is.
Just making sure I'm clear on the numbers. It sounded like the motion passed. Just make sure I capture this. Who's in favor? Just raise your hand. I just need to see. Now, I mean, say what you said, you know, on the vote. So if you said yes, or raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And then the not, also hesitation. What
I
is
was
it?
kind
And I.
of, yeah, I was kind of just lifted them over the sort of.
Okay, so that's 3, and I'm 4, so it's, was it 5, 3? Yeah. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3.
I would like to change my vote. I don't.
You'd like to change your vote?
I would like to be in opposition, I think. I'm sorry if that was a wrench in it.
So I feel like there's a lot of energy around this. What would, I know, votes, I guess technically, we can do that. We do that, then it's, 5-4, it still passes, but that, it would be tied. It would be tied. That's right, it would be a 4-4. Yeah.
Sorry.
If I could ask, no, that's
Yeah.
fine. I'd just like to ask for some clarity of, well, this is no action is not an option.
So a tie is not an option.
No, I'm just saying, no, a tie is fair, it's fine.
Okay.
But we would like some feedback as to what you would need to make a decision. Because this is deficient, officially deficient for the safety requirements, right? A public safety issue. So we need to move forward with some option as expeditiously as possible, right? We can't just let this sit. I think you saw the pictures, it's failing. If a big storm came, there's a risk of failure. It's a road, 50 houses would be completely isolated. Right. So I'd like if the commission could give staff some guidance back as to what you would like to see to, do you want to go a different direction than alternative 1? Or do you want us to look at a bridge? I mean, we can come back with that. I'm fairly certain that's going to be a much more expensive option, but we'd be glad to look at that. So any guidance on what you would like us to bring back, because we would like to make a decision one way or the other. And again, I'll remind you, if it's a decision of doing something other than concurrent configuration, that would have to go to city council for the ultimate decision too. So just trying to lay the parameters of, of path forward.
That's good. And can you I guess, could you put the last page up? We're kind of thinking about what we're voting.
The last page, I was
Kind of synopsis.
Right, like you, there's this list, are you trying to look at a list of the?
Yeah.
The last one. Presented.
This one?
I have a list that had like comparative of each one, not the cost, but just like the,
Yeah.
yes, okay. Excellent.
And the city is tasked with fixing the high hazard problem, right?
Correct. We have received an official letter from the dam safety saying this dam is deficient. There were deadlines for us to respond. We've responded within the deadline, and we have acquired an engineer to move forward with this. And now we're working on under other deadlines to move forward with an improvement that would restore this in compliance with the high hazard dam safety requirements, which requires passage. I think we went into the details previously, but passage of what's called a 1/3 PMV probable maximum precipitation. So that's part of the requirements for the upgrades of the spillway, is it does have to pass more water than it was originally designed for in order to meet the current standards of a high hazard dam. So that's partly what's driving the cost of the improvements here. It is being upgraded to a state that is a higher level of service than the original dam was designed to meet.
Is it is there a road budget that would help pay for this as well? It seems like a road issue as much as a stormwater issue if you're just replacing the pond. I mean, I'm sure you guys know more about it too. So the fund.
Yeah, I mean, we see this as a dam project. That's why it's covered under stormwater. It is a road. It's a city road. Honestly, I see where the funding is coming from is less than an issue of the decision of how to move forward. And getting additional funding would do nothing but slow it down, I think, right? Because road funding comes from the general fund. We have lots, which is, if you had to do a bond there, that would go to vote. It's a, transportation bond from the general fund or general obligation. It would have to go be voted upon by the public. That would be a whole nother process. Again, that would slow down the implementation of this project. We're looking at options of trying to move
That makes
forward as expediently as possible.
But
Thank you.
I guess go back to the question a little bit. You mentioned that debt service may be a way to fund this. Is that authorized debt service without going to a bond, or is that?
Correct.
Okay,
So
so that's.
that would be a revenue bond. See, we are an enterprise fund,
Which we don't have.
stormwater utility. We have the authority to issue revenue bonds, which do not require a vote of the public. A vote of the public is only required for general obligation bonds that are backed by taxes. And that's why it's a different type of debt service.
And you think this alternative is better for stormwater than the other two alternatives considered?
Depends on how you just, define stormwater.
Yeah.
So here's the way I'm looking at this. The way we're looking at this is, and those costs are, maybe within 10%. I don't think we're that accurate. I think the cost is essentially the same for any of the alternatives, to be honest, effectively. And so, from a water quality standpoint, you can make some arguments depending on the parameter. I don't think there's a large difference in the water quality, even, to be honest with you. I do think if it's a lake, it's gonna potentially sediment up. The city's not going to be removing that. That would be a private property owner decision because they own the lake. We only own the
Yeah.
right of way and the dam. If they wanted to do some dredging, that would be a privately funded project. Okay, that's not part of our project. So, that, to me, that is a kind of a separate issue.
This is a stormwater runoff issue, infrastructure maintenance issue, really. Not reducing.
Yeah, the maintenance that the city will do of the structures within the right of way of, right? So it's gonna be the outlet structure, the gates, the emergency spillway, the downstream structure on the bank that will discharge into Richland Creek. So it's really just the structure, the maintenance of the loop. Is again, that's gonna be the private property owners that are upstream.
Let me just recognize the community.
But my plan is when you guys have this drain for over years, try and pull permits, try and address this thing and dig it out and put aeration systems in it and restore it. So.
I guess in my reasoning, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, in my kind of reason for voting is that obviously establishes an issue, establishes a safety hazard and kind of gone through all those. They looked at different possibilities, right? And a lot of them potentially they're kind of all in the margin of error of what could possibly be beneficial, but the community has weighed in. This is their kind of vote on which direction to go with. But as far as like liability, if there was an issue with that big storm, and it kind of, there's an issue, blocked off the community or there's damage to all those homes. I am assuming the liability and financial costs of that issue of like a flooding or anything like that would also fall on the city, and therefore like having this as a fix, having this as an infrastructure improvement would kind of mitigate that, right? So if in the end, the cost of if there's an issue in the cost of, flooding those homes or whatever the damage would be is tenfold what this cost is, then it's kind of like, well, as far as the city funding, I'm not sure how we can rally those other property owners to contribute to this in any way besides obviously what you just mentioned, but I guess that was my kind of rationale. It's like you either pay 6-ish million now or potentially 10x, whatever it is, the consequences. That was, I suppose, my thinking. And that maybe there are poor assumptions halfway through.
And I guess, just rethinking the idea that we're approving that we're. It's tied to the dam only and not the lake. That's the challenge, the thing the city owns, which is the thing that creates all the life. But that's.
Yeah, mine is a conceit is with the cost of it, your staff and the team of the job. Then we have what options work best. But I want to see what else second guess.
Yeah.
It's just the total cost of this. With the liability issue. Understand that's something that has to be done, not necessarily.
But, yeah.
So,
But again,
do you still want to change your vote?
I feel really on the fence about this, and I'm inclined to go with supporting it, given the conversation we just had and the community's wishes. I think my concern is the long-term outcome of maintaining what we have now with the promise of, having that into the future when that won't necessarily be the case without dredging and maintenance, which again has its own sort of environmental challenges. And so being honest about that, I think we have this opportunity to do something forward thinking in terms of water quality, and two of the alternatives are. However, when you have community support coming in strongly for what we have now, I think that complicates things. And so, I'm inclined to support this if that's what the commission wants to do.
Okay, so we'll do a motion to reconsider, which means we'll pull the first motion and vote again. So may I have a motion to reconsider? Motion to reconsider. For a second. All in favor? Any opposition? Now I may have the original motion. Josh, you got a motion, what's the, yeah. Yeah, okay, Josh, is there a second? Nicole, all in favor? Yep. Any opposition? Like Robert Newton was talking about. All right, so we are at the top of the hour and we have not heard from Ben or Forrest. So,
He is, I would, yeah, Horace can stay, he's, an invited guest, and if the commission still can make the time to receive his presentation, I think that would be preferable for us and for Horace.
okay,
He's an outside guest.
Okay.
Maybe difficult for him.
all right. Commissioner, good with that?
Yes.
All right. Yes, sir.
I'm not asking for any money.
I'm just here to introduce.
Which already give you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good. I'm just here to introduce, Forrest. Raleigh is part of the Upper News River Basin Association, which is basically a group that, looks after, specifically for this presentation, Falls Lake, and everything that drains to it. And, the UNRBA is, vital in, keeping everybody together about Falls Lake and collaborating with the herding cats of all the different communities, large, big and small, and everything just in between. The city is very interested, obviously, in Falls Lake, since that's where we get our drinking water from. And we are doing primary water treatment for Falls Lake. So what happens in the rest of that watershed is very key. We have about 1.2% of the residences that's in the Falls Lake watershed, but we treat for all the water that comes to it. So obviously, we have a big say, or want to have a bigger say in kind of what goes on in that watershed. And an ongoing effort that UNRBA has been doing, of course, we're talking about is kind of water quality modeling for Falls Lake to see what the Falls Lake rules that were put in place in 2011 by the state of North Carolina as a way to kind of help the nutrient loading in Falls Lake and kind of see what we can do about that. And the UNRVA, with all the community support, wanted to model Falls Lake and kind of see what was actually going on with like the water quality and what the nutrient goals could be and should be for Falls Lake. And will the state standards address that, and how can we get there in a better efficient manner? But with that, for us, the executive director of UNRVA, he's got a little control there.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you. This has been a tremendous project. I became the executive director in 2012, January. So coming up on 12 years, been working on this project. I worked for the state regulatory agency for almost 30 years. I've worked as a consultant for almost 20 years. And this has been probably one of the best and most difficult projects I've worked on in my entire career. We appreciate the city of Raleigh's engagement, and historically, the city of Raleigh, I was on the Environmental Management Commission when these rules were passed back in 2011, and I voted for them. So, you know, that was my job then. I voted that we move forward with them, and we have. And one of the things that I'm going to mention to you today a little bit as we talk about these rules is that the cost of these rules, because we're talking about over $1.5 billion to implement these rules. So it's been extremely expensive. One of the reasons we're here today is because of that cost and because of the leadership of Raleigh and the folks in this watershed. So we have a very diverse basin. As Ben said, you know, we've got people all the way up to Roxborough and all the way down to the city of Raleigh. And Roxborough is not Raleigh. And Person County and Granville County and rural Orange County or rural Durham County are a lot different than Durham and Raleigh. And we have a lot of small towns, and that includes the massive town of Steele, which is in there, and they've got about, I think, 2,000 people in it, and they're engaged in what we're doing. So I have 14 jurisdictions that includes the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority that's had membership in this organization. We also have a list of folks that are active stakeholders. We have agriculture, we have environmental groups. Peter Rabb, some of you may know him, Peter from American Rivers. He comes to most of all of our meetings and been very engaged, and we really appreciate his work. Conservation groups have been very interested in our efforts because of all the work that's done. City of Raleigh has been putting with over $1 million a year in this watershed for mainly conservation of land. And as I will go through some of our findings in the modeling, you'll find out we're still very strongly behind the idea of conservation. Conservation is extremely important. But we've made some very dramatic findings on this watershed and on this lake that affects our ability to try and achieve the existing water quality standard for chlorophyll A in this lake. As you all know, 500,000 people drink this water, more than 500,000, and it is obviously the number one highest and best use for human beings. Now, ecology is extremely important, and ecology is a big part of that as well. It provides downstream protection from flooding. That's why the Corps cited this project. It wasn't cited for water supply. They didn't build it for the city of Raleigh to have water supply. They built it because of flooding on the Neuse River and down at Kinston and other locations. And it also provides minimum downstream flows, which are very important. In my first part of my career, I was a modeler for the state. I set effluent limits for wastewater plants and all around the state, including in the Neuse River. The Neuse River is 7 to 18-year-old flow. The drought flow was very low, and therefore it had some problems with habitat and other things. So now we've got a minimum release. Same thing over in the Jordan side. Now I mentioned Jordan again as probably an alternative review of how to deal with this. It protects habitat downstream because of that release, and it provides a tremendous amount of recreational activity on the lake. I don't know how many times you've been out there. I always try to go out and look at the landing areas, the people that are going out. There's a lot of folks using the lake. The lake is meeting its uses. It's meeting its actual listed uses, which are recreation, biology, water supply. And so it is providing all of those. We've looked back at all the records on fish kills and everything else, and there's not been any fish kills hardly at all anywhere in the lake since the lake was built. This is not a true lake. It is a reservoir. It was constructed, the dam was built. I cut firewood in this lake when I was in Raleigh before it was filled in. I was there when they closed the dam in 1982. It has been a facility that's been very controversial. And one of the reasons that it was is because the state in 2008 said the lake was not meeting the water quality standard for Porterville Lake. Put it on the section 303 D list of the Clean Water Act, and that initiated the state to have to come up with either a TMDL, total maximum daily load, to meet the standard or a water quality management plan. And that started the wheels rolling. The legislature passed a bill in 2008, I think, or thereabouts. I don't know, Whit, if you remember exactly, but it's somewhere along there, that basically directed the Environmental Management Commission and the Department which is now the Department of Environmental Quality, to adopt rules. And they gave them a deadline of 2010. It took them to 2011, but the legislature moved it to 2011. State had to pull together their modeling. They monitored between 2005 and 2007, and they built a model and they based their rules on that model. The numbers that came out were extremely restrictive. In fact, these rules, the existing rules, are the most restrictive rules in the state of North Carolina for nutrient management. And they're the only rules in the state that are being implemented where the local governments are being asked to roll back the impact from existing development that was on the ground in 2006. I enjoyed the earlier presentation. I know where Pigeon House Branch is at. So did that back in the 76. We had a different name for it. We call it Pigeon Blank Creek. And because it was in bad shape, and I'm glad to see they're still working on it and doing those things. And I enjoyed the cost figures on reducing on retrofits, on small lots. And we've been looking at the city of Durham's installed over 300 similar projects in their city. They've been working on this since 10 years and longer. And the cost of that, I was just at the Board of Commissioners in Durham County, and the stormwater manager there told me they installed a project at a school that included a biological retention basin. The whole project was $400,000. That wasn't the cost of the project, of just the stormwater portion of it. But the amount of nitrogen reduction they got was 5 pounds a year. Right? $400,000. Now, even if you take and reduce to 250, that's about the number you were saying up there, 50,000 pounds per acre. Extremely difficult, and finding space to do this. People didn't build these projects and leave space. So it's a very challenging situation. That's why 2 stages went. Stage 1 was 20% nitrogen, 40% phosphorus. And that was to meet the standard at the intake where the city takes the water out. Standard is being met at the intake. That's the good news. The other good news is the lake is meeting its intended uses. It's providing the things that people use it for. So these are the things that are happening. New development. Jordan had similar rules that were passed actually earlier than Falls Lake rules. They went to the legislature and they passed them because there was all kind of political stuff on it, as you well know. They've never implemented the new development rules. In other words, all the development that's occurred since the rules passed had no nutrient reduction requirements. In the falls, the nutrient requirements for new development on any land that has half an acre or more disturbed, they have to make sure they do not increase the nutrients from whatever they're going to develop. 50% of that reduction has to be on site. In other words, constructed with the project. They can purchase 50% of the credit from other sites, but that's what's being done. That's what Ben is doing. Portion up there. The people aren't going to be happy that you can put apartments in there by a little bit. And I'll get to that in a minute. But agriculture have met their reduction requirements. Agriculture in this watershed has contracted. The amount of land under agricultural production in this watershed has dropped by 44% since 2006. That's just since 2006. So agriculture has mostly met their reductions by attrition. Now, they've also put in a lot of BMPs. Thankfully, there's no chicken houses, there's no hog farms, there's no things like that in this watershed. If it were, it would be much more of a challenge, but they're meeting that. Wastewater treatment plants have done a tremendous job. They have reduced their nutrient loadings close to what the state sees, but they're not at their design flow. They're much less than what they're permitted for. And existing development, alternative-based compliance program called the IAI, the Interim Alternative Implementation Approach. A terrible acronym, but what we developed in conjunction with all our members is an investment-based program. And each one of the members agreed to put so much money into projects in the watershed that would benefit water quality, nutrient reduction, other things. The North Carolina has not approved a nutrient credit for conservation of land. But in the IAIA, conservation of land was approved. But the goal is 1.5 million a year. We're doing much more than that, mainly because Raleigh's doing $1 million. But everybody stepped up. Granville County, Person County, all those folks are putting money in the project. Our first year, which was 2 years ago, $5 million were committed. And so this year the reports are coming in for the second year. So it's been very successful. Agriculture has actually reached their stage 2 requirements. They're already, and the stage 2 requirements are 40% in nitrogen and 77% in phosphorus for all lands that were in development in 2006. That's an amazing thing. Our calculations, first year we worked on this to get all of our approvals from the state for our monitor and modeling program. We evaluated that, and it was impossible to achieve 77. And you would have to treat the runoff from every piece of developed land at least twice in the watershed to get to 40. We found out since then it's even worse than that. So we've been doing this for a while. One of the things the UNRBA committed to early on, which is one of the reasons why I'm part of it, is a science-based process. You know, just because you're against something doesn't mean that you can just say, I'm not going to do it. We have to develop the science that guides us in what we're doing. The folks in the Georgia took a little different position. They've gotten the laws modified and the rules modified so they don't have to necessarily implement the more costly aspects. The point sources are reducing it. So we developed our monitoring program, 4 years of intensive monitoring, which is more than what the rules require for this adaptive management. As part of the negotiation that Raleigh helped with for stage 2, it opened up the door for adaptive management. UNRBA said, we'll study this lake and this watershed, and we'll come up with some information that will guide what the rules really need to be, and we'll readopt the rules. As you well know, the legislature created the collaboratory at UNC initially, and now it's grown much bigger, and it's called the Collaboratory for North Carolina. They have studied the lake and watershed for the last 4 years. That information has been shared with us. We've been working in conjunction with them. So we've got a tremendous, this is the most studied reservoir in the state of North Carolina. I've been working at this for 47 years, and this is the most studied reservoir, and I was involved and responsible for the monitoring program for all the lakes at one time. And so we have done something that nobody else has done, and this is all money from local governments. There's no grants in this money. It's all paid by the local government, Raleigh, Durham, and every one of our 14 members have been paying dues. $10 million have been invested in the study. It's a tremendous amount of work, and it is a collaborative process. I could show you all kinds of graphs, and at the end of this presentation is a list of links, and I think Ben provided that to the group, and Cam provided to them that presentation. And so you can look at those. We're developing our modeling reports. We've got thousands of pages of modeling reports. It's just extremely interesting reading. It'll keep you up all night. Just keep reading that. Can't put it down. But we have made some really amazing findings that really wasn't factored in. This watershed doesn't look like I-85 when you drive through it across the lake and through Durham there. It's not all like that. Almost 60% of the watershed is forested. Now that's patchy, but it's 60%, that's a lot. And 75% of the watershed, once you take open water and unmanaged land and wetlands and surface areas of the water, because there's several impoundments in this, that 75% of this watershed is either natural or in a semi-natural state that is not managed. In other words, there's no nutrient application to them. There's nothing being done. In fact, our study we developed a watershed model, the warped watershed model, the warped lake model, and the EFDC lake model, and the statistical model. We've done 4 models for this to help guide us in what we're doing. And what we have seen is that since 2006, because of the activities of the watershed, we've seen significant reduction in nitrogen, almost 30% reduction in nitrogen, just because of the actions between 2006 What we haven't seen is we haven't seen a change in the chlorophyll A. 2017 was our lowest flow year, had the least amount of nutrients going in the lake. That was our highest chlorophyll A. So there's some things that we're seeing with the model. We took the lake model and we ran it. We took the watershed model, and took the whole watershed and said, what if it was all forest? What would that do? And we just turned it all to forest. So the runoff coefficients, put the amount of nutrients coming in from an all forested watershed, still would not meet the standard. Would not meet the chlorophyll A standard everywhere in the lake. It's still meeting down at the dam. Good news for Raleigh. So,
Just one question, that, your pie chart, is that for this year?
no, that was the average of the 4 years we studied it, from 2014 to 2018.
Okay.
And the watershed model was set up using this data, but the great thing about the watershed model is you can vary it once you get it set up and look at different scenarios. We did a bunch of scenarios. But that was the average contribution over 4 years from the watershed, from the different land uses. So the conclusions, taking everything together, this is a very high level presentation. I presented this to the county commissioners. I'm going to present it tonight at the town of Butner. I'm on the watershed tour now. I'm going to all the jurisdictions. Ben told me to remind the city council is going to consider our consensus president when I get to them at the 17th, October the 17th. So we're hoping to get every jurisdiction to support those. But basically, when you look at this, you find yourself in a situation where you have a lake that's meeting its uses. It's not meeting the standard. Large scale nutrient reductions are not possible. There's no way we're going to get large scale nutrient. It's going to be incremental. We're going to have to go through that. We have to protect forests and other national. One of the reasons the lake is as good as it is because the watershed is 60% wood. We found out that wooded areas are not zero net impact. They all have nutrients coming. 60% of the 50% of the nutrients from going into this lake come from unmanaged lands. So only 13% of this watershed is developed. Only 1.5% of this watershed is developed densely. So just think about how little heavy duty development that we have. And we want to continue with the watershed organization. Ben mentioned something very important. Herding cats is very difficult. Keeping everybody at the table. I've had people that want to keep their, not being there. They've had stem dropped out, by the way, and I got to get them back in. But, it's hard to keep people at the table because they think, somehow they're going to end up better than they are. I'll also tell you the legislature is not the same as it was in 2008. It's a different political world out there. And I've been pushing to keep, let's continue to work. Let's continue to reduce nutrient. Let's continue to work on that. And so far, everybody has done that. We've had a lot of public contact. We need a lot more public contact, public support, and stakeholder input is essential for us getting to where we need to go. We want to use the best science that we have, but we want a realistic path. Let's not say we can do things. If we spend, one of the things that's always amazing to me is that even if we spent the money that we have, $1 billion, I'm not sure it would make that much difference in the quality of the lake. It's just a very stable situation. It's hard to change these lakes. They have a thumbprint that's consistent with a Piedmont reservoir. You drown the river and you get a drowned river reservoir. Watershed that goes in there has an impact on it. It's hard to change that. It's hard to unscramble the egg. It's like rolling back the impact. How do you roll back the impact from what people have been doing for 300 years in this watershed? And the answer is you can't. But you can do better. We need to use cost-effective options. We need to promote conservation, and we need to focus on watershed health. The one water approach has been used all across the United States. It's certainly part of what Jordan is doing right now. If people in the upper part of the watershed of Jordan were cooperating like the people in this watershed, it would be different. Now, we don't have Greensboro up there. We do have Durham. They're a little more cooperative. But one of the reasons why that's happened here is because Raleigh's been at the table. Raleigh pays most of our dues. And that's something, if you don't invest in your watershed protection is critical, water supply protection. It's not going to happen unless people work on it. And if we're going to have opposition and fighting, nothing good is gonna come out of that. So we need to continue that. Here are the consensus principles in summary. It's a 2-page document. Falls Lake needs to be protected. Number one, everybody agrees we need to take action. We need to continue management. We believe the rules should be passed quickly. We don't believe that we should drag our feet. We've been studying this since 2014. The data will be 10 years old next year. I mean, it takes a long time for water quality data to get through. We need to focus on watershed health. We need to look at adaptive management. We have recommended to look at this every 5 years, and we think that needs to be included in the rules. And every 25 years, do a complete review and decide if the rules need to be modified. That's adaptive management, doing change. You can't set rules and expect them to do the same thing we did 25 years earlier. So we want to do an investment-based joint compliance program like we did on IAI. We're going to have to increase the investment, but we need to do an investment-based program, not a pounds reduction program, because we're not going to get many pounds reduction. If you do a project and get half a pound a year, that ain't going to get you close to getting the reductions that you need. Now, we can do more of those, and we still need to do those, but not by themselves. We need to avoid requirements for natural areas. The reason I say that is we ran them all, the lake model, and said, what would you have to do today to meet the standard? Everyone knows. We've already reduced, remember, nutrients around 30% since 2006. We estimate that at least 50% additional reduction in nitrogen would be needed to meet the standard. Remember that 50% of the loading comes from managed land. You're not going to get zero. So what are you going to do to get that? You're going to have to treat the runoff from forested areas, which makes little or no sense to the people in the watershed. You're not going to get them that. The city of Durham has been looking at algal flowway, which is a treatment system that takes the water out of the creek and runs it through and treats it and grows algae, and then they scrape it off and they compost it and they remove it. It is the most cost-effective way to get pounds of nutrient. It isn't 50,000 pounds. It isn't 5,000 per pound. It's less than that. So it's costly. So Durham tried to site one of these things. They could never get a site. People didn't want it on their property. They went to Granville County. Fortunately, that wasn't very much fun. And to put a site there, and they didn't want to do it. A 10 million gallon day system. We estimate that it would take 110 of these systems at 10 million gallons a day to meet a 50% reduction. That's a billion gallons of water treated every day. So that's not going to be something that's going to be. So we don't want natural areas to be included in the balance. We want to promote land conservation. That's a big one. As I said earlier, we need to keep the land undeveloped and natural as possible in this watershed. We also need to get money invested in there. One of the things I asked Ed Bucking, is Raleigh willing to pay more for land? Too concerned, because these people that have farms and large tracts of land, they're set. That's their only investment they have. So a developer comes in and says, we'll give you 25,000 per acre, and we offered them 2,000 for land conservation. What are they going to do? So we're going to have to step up and do some things to get land conservation to a level that's going to keep the watershed from developing. And a watershed organization like the UNRBA to keep everybody at the table and work through it is something that needs to be done. We need to continue the new development. If you're at the bottom of the hole, stop digging. You don't want to continue to add loading to this reservoir. That's something you don't want. And so that's an important thing. We need to include requirements for new expanded wastewater treatment plants, just like in the lower Neuse and the Neuse estuary. City of Raleigh's having a hard time finding credits. Well, in the upper watershed, Durham wants to develop, South Granville Water and Sewer wants to develop, Hillsborough wants to develop. I mean, they're much smaller in terms of the overall, but they still want to be able to grow. We need to find some ways to reduce nutrients and still allow them to grow, because otherwise you're going to have people dropping out and not being a part of that. We need to optimize treatment performance. We can do much more. The City of Raleigh, I saw a presentation of the Water Association. City of Raleigh is down now to less than 2 milligrams per liter total nitrogen in their effluent. That's amazing. And that's at their treatment level now. So that's an amazing thing. So we can do more to treat it. We need to still remove on-site wastewater systems. On-site wastewater systems represents 50% of the people in this watershed. About 50% are on septic tanks and wells. They're only 1%, less than 1% of the actual load into the lake. But still, if you have failing systems, you want to get those off. So we want money to go into that. We want to avoid separate management plans for impoundments of the watershed. There's sub-impoundments. City of Durham gets its water out, town of Hillsborough, South Granville Water Sewer get their water out of this watershed. But rather than doing individual overlapping programs, let's do one for the whole watershed. Let's do it that way. And we want to expand the list of eligible practices. Land conservation was in it. We got hydrilla control got added to it because hydrilla control has water quality benefits. And so that's one of the things you can invest in. We want to promote opportunities for equitable stakeholder participation. That's a way of saying it needs to be fair and equitable in terms of what we do. And, I can understand it doesn't seem fair and equitable for City of Raleigh to be putting the most into the thing, but I can tell you that one of the reasons everybody's in there is because you're in there. And we'll have to work on that some, but we've got that as an opportunity. And we want to evaluate the chlorophyll standard. It's not right. It wasn't right in 1979 when it was adopted. I was there then. I was part of the team that looked at that. And it wasn't right then. It was for the Chilliwack River. It was a great tool, but nobody, no reservoir in North Carolina that's in a developed watershed is going to meet 40 micrograms per liter every. There's 27 monitoring stations in Falls Lake in the lake. There are 8 in Highland Lake. Most of the lakes in North Carolina has 3 or less monitoring stations. There's no lake in the state that's monitored more intensely than Falls Lake. If we're going to monitor that closely, we need a standard that more properly reflects the uses. So we're going to work on that, but we're not going to let this one keep us from getting the rules adopted. Because if we raise this issue, Peter don't like it, environmental groups don't like it, EPA's involved, we've met with them and talked with them, so we still got some issues, but we're not going to press on that because we don't want to lose the momentum that we have. We've looked at all of our jurisdictions, and certainly the City of Raleigh has comprehensive vision things, and we've correlated that with what we are proposing in our consensus principles, and we think there's good correlation. I think green infrastructure, pushing for carbon neutral, pushing for collaborative processes, sustaining, growing, successful neighborhoods. That's all part of what we're trying to do. The next steps are these consensus principles we presented to all the local governments in Raleigh on October the 17th. And we're going to try to have all of those resolutions in hand by the November 15th meeting of the board of the UNRBA and get those ready. DWR says they think the rules will take till 2027. I think we can get them done in 2025. I think we've done enough pre-work that we can do that. I'm gonna work hard to do that. But I ain't gonna be working much longer. So I like to get that done before I get home. And so this is the additional information. We have lots of information on our website and it provides more background. We will have our modeling reports up there soon. They're in final review now, and the Division of Water Resources have been at the table. So this is what the UNRBA has been doing. It's been I think one of the most innovative ways to look at this across the state, and we think that DWR is coming around, and they're looking at this for Jordan, they're looking at this for Highlock Lake, they're looking at this for Albemarle samples. So anyway, that's the story.
Thank you, Boris. Any questions or comments?
I had one, more over curiosity. I may have looked at this wrong, but I was reading the background materials, and it seemed to imply that atmospheric nitrogen is going down.
Dropped by 20.
What would explain that for us?
The air emissions program for reducing, Clean Air Act that was passed by the North Carolina legislature, the emissions control, the conversion to less carbon-based systems, alternative energy, but it's dropped by 20%. And remember, all of that land that's not managed, the only nutrient applications they get is what comes out of the atmosphere. It's dropped by 20% since 2006, and we think it's going to continue to go down. Obviously, it's going to get to an asymptotic point where it's not there anymore. But that's a good sign too. That's built into the 30% reduction that we saw since 2006. Appreciate it.
Yep, and just a real quick plug, UNRBA board is, which Raleigh is part of and everyone else, their main board meetings are the third Wednesday of every month.
No, well, not every month, it's January, March, May, June, September, if I get you somewhere right. November, and that's it. So there's 6 meetings, the board, past board committee meets every month.
Yeah, and then there are more staff sessions, which is like where the real work is done. But it's, the Path Forward Committee meets on the first Tuesday of every month, so I'm before us every month.
Yeah.
Again, of the 500,000 people that use drinking water, how many of those are Raleigh? Like, I'm just curious, who's up, who from upstream is drinking water?
Well, we're talking about just from Falls Lake, that doesn't include the people upstream.
Yeah, I guess, how many people, where are the people that are getting the water from the province? I guess, I mean.
What did Raleigh throwing drinking water in the falls?
Out of Falls Way.
Yeah, okay.
Now Durham, people who are like Mickey and Little River Reservoir, which feed.
In the watershed, it's not.
They're probably what's supplies. Raleigh and Durham are heavy users.
I was in Wake Forest, the town of Wake Forest on Tuesday night. And of course, I always remind them that they're drinking that water. They've got an itty bitty part of the watershed too, but they're at the table. And I have recommended them, stay at the table. This is your own say so, and what's gonna happen in this watershed for managing your water supply. You're drinking that water. So it's important. There's about 300,000 people in this watershed, just total population, about 300,000.
Real quick, I just want to say, thanks for his leadership. Truly has been a tremendous effort. Forrest has done a great job keeping folks at the table and, keeping this thing moving. Ron is very thankful for that. And we've learned a lot through this modeling effort. I mean, he said it's a tremendous project. And, looking at the science, you can go back and look at the changes in the dry years and the wet years. And, clearly what matters is, how much of that falls and runs off the ground and makes it to water. That's just a clear indication. That understanding of those dynamics has been really helpful for what we're doing, know where we need the best. So, thank you for here today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Appreciate it.
And the consensus principles, as Forrest says, is gonna be on the October 17th City Council meeting agenda, which will be published next week, but it is on there as of this morning.
Did you share that with this group?
No, but I did. Okay.
There's a backup document to that that's 48 pages long, which is short for what we did. 48 pages, and it is called Concepts and Principles for Revised Nutrient Strategy in Falls Lake. And that's what the consensus principles are built on. And it's got a lot more detail, a lot more science, a lot more graphic plots, a lot more discussion. It's a very good summary document. And there is an executive summary to it, so it's probably 8 or 9 pages. But it's a good document if you want to know all the scientific background of where we are. That's a good reference document.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Commissioner Forrest. Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Even though.
Thanks, Lord.